Mother's worst nightmare. Son disappeared at mall food court in 2005. 16 years later, Janitor's letter shocked everyone in 2005. 11-year-old Marcus Peterson vanished without a trace from the Westfield Mall food court in Columbus, Ohio. What a janitor discovers 16 years later in a sealed maintenance room will leave you speechless. This is the haunting story of Marcus Peterson, a case that proves some missing children cases hold secrets darker than anyone imagined. A mother's worst nightmare that shocked an entire nation. Picture this, December 17th, 2005. The holiday season in full swing. Christmas decorations everywhere. Families shopping for gifts, children laughing. The Westfield Mall food court packed with people, the smell of pizza, Chinese food, and cinnamon rolls filling the air. Among the chaos, 32-year-old Jennifer Peterson sits at a table with her son Marcus, an 11-year-old boy with a bright smile, wearing his favorite blue jacket, a red backpack by his side. They just finished shopping for his father's Christmas gift, a watch they picked out together. Marcus is excited. He wants to get a slice of pizza before they head home. Jennifer says yes. She hands him $10. Watch him walk toward the Pizza Palace counter. 15 feet away, she can see him clearly. She glances down at her phone for maybe 30 seconds. A text from her husband asking when they will be home. When she looks up, Marcus is gone. Jennifer's heart stops. She stands up immediately, scans the food court. Hundreds of people, dozens of children, but no Marcus, no blue jacket, no red backpack. She walks quickly to the Pizza Palace counter. The teenager behind the register remembers seeing Marcus. He was in line. Then he just walked away. But which direction? The kid does not know. Too many customers. Too much chaos. Jennifer starts calling Marcus's name, louder and louder. Other shoppers start noticing. Some join in calling his name. Security is alerted within 3 minutes. The food court is sealed off. Exits monitored. Announcements made over the intercom. Marcus Peterson, 11 years old. Blue jacket, red backpack. If you see him, alert security immediately. But Marcus Peterson disappeared without a trace. In the middle of a crowded mall. During the busiest shopping season of the year, surrounded by hundreds of witnesses. Cameras everywhere, security guards on patrol, and somehow no one saw anything. This is the story of a child disappearance that defied logic, a case that would haunt investigators for 16 years, and a shocking revelation that no one saw coming. Stay with me, because what happens next will change how you think about missing children cases forever. The initial response was massive. Within 20 minutes, every exit of Westfield Mall was locked down. Security guards positioned at doors. Police arrived within 12 minutes of the first call. Officers immediately began interviewing witnesses. The food court had been packed. At least 300 people present during the time of Marcus's disappearance. Surveillance cameras covered most areas. Store employees were questioned. Shoppers were stopped before leaving. Descriptions were taken. Names and phone numbers collected. The Columbus Police Department treated this as an abduction. Every second counted. The first 48 hours would be critical. Jennifer Peterson was beside herself, screaming Marcus's name. Running through the mall, security had to restrain her. Not to be cruel, but to preserve the scene, to keep her from contaminating potential evidence. Her husband David arrived 18 minutes after the first call. A construction worker who dropped everything and raced to the mall. Together, they watched as dozens of police officers searched every store, every bathroom, every storage room, every maintenance closet. K-9 units arrived, dogs trained to track missing children. They picked up Marcus's scent near the food court, followed it toward the east corridor, past the Gap, past the Foot Locker. Then the trail went cold near the emergency exit, an exit that should have been alarmed, should have alerted security if opened. But the alarm had malfunctioned that morning, a maintenance issue that had not been fixed yet. By 6 o'clock that evening, the entire mall was evacuated. Every shopper escorted out. Every employee questioned. The building became a crime scene. Investigators worked through the night, reviewing security footage, analyzing every angle, every camera, every timestamp. They watched Marcus stand in line at Pizza Palace, watched him turn around, watched him walk toward the East Corridor, and then he walked past a blind spot, a 15-foot section where two camera angles did not quite meet. When he should have emerged on the other side, he never did. He simply vanished, like he walked into another dimension. Investigators rewound the footage, watched it frame by frame, slowed it down, enhanced it. But Marcus Peterson walked into that blind spot and never came out. The Peterson family became a media sensation overnight. Local news covered the story extensively. Jennifer and David appeared on every channel, pleading for information, begging anyone who knew anything to come forward. Marcus's school photo was plastered everywhere. On telephone poles, on billboards, on milk cartons. The image of an 11-year-old boy with sandy brown hair and hazel eyes became burned into the collective consciousness of Columbus, Ohio. Tips started pouring in, hundreds of calls, thousands of emails. People claiming they saw Marcus at a gas station in Kentucky, at a rest stop in Pennsylvania, at a Walmart in Indiana. Every single lead was investigated. Every single tip followed up. But they all led nowhere. The FBI joined the investigation on day 3. Missing children cases became federal jurisdiction when abduction was suspected. When state lines might be involved, Special Agent Rebecca Morrison took charge, a veteran investigator with 12 years of experience in child abduction cases. She brought resources, she brought expertise, she brought hope. The FBI set up a command center at the Columbus field office, dedicated dozens of agents to the case, created a detailed timeline, interviewed over 500 witnesses, analyzed every piece of evidence, every receipt, every security tape, every phone record. But they found nothing. No clear suspect, no obvious motive, no ransom demand, no body, no trace of Marcus Peterson anywhere. The first Christmas without Marcus devastated the Peterson family. Jennifer could not bring herself to decorate the tree, could not face buying presents, could not pretend everything was okay. David threw himself into the search, creating flyers, organizing volunteer search parties, setting up a website dedicated to finding Marcus. The website received millions of views, thousands of comments, messages of support from around the world, but no concrete information, no breakthrough, just sympathy and prayers. Their other son, 9-year-old Tyler, struggled to understand, why did his big brother disappear? Why could no one find him? Why did Mom cry every night? The family started therapy, individual sessions, group sessions, marriage, counseling, grief. Counseling, anything to help them cope with the unimaginable. 3 months into the investigation, the first major suspect emerged, a 38-year-old man named Richard Kowalski, a registered sex offender who had been at the mall that day. Security footage confirmed his presence. He had been shopping near the food court around the time of Marcus's disappearance. His vehicle was parked in the east parking lot, near the emergency exit where Marcus's scent had gone cold. Kowalski had a history, convicted in 1998 for inappropriate contact with a minor, served for years. Released on probation in 2002, required to register his address, prohibited from being near schools or playgrounds. But shopping malls were not restricted. Police brought Kowalski in for questioning. He lawyered up immediately, refused to answer questions without his attorney present. His lawyer argued that his client had every right to shop at a public mall. That being a registered offender did not make him guilty of every crime involving children, but investigators were not convinced. They obtained a search warrant, searched his apartment, his vehicle, his storage unit. They found nothing. No evidence linking him to Marcus's, no children's clothing, no suspicious items, No trace of the missing boy. His alibi was weak, but not disprovable. He claimed he was shopping for his mother's birthday gift, bought a sweater from Macy's. The receipt confirmed the purchase. The timestamp showed 12:47 in the afternoon, 22 minutes before Marcus disappeared. Could he have bought the sweater, gone back to his car, grabbed Marcus, and left without being seen? Technically possible, but the evidence was not there. The Peterson family became convinced Kowalski was responsible. Jennifer saw his face on the news and felt sick. David wanted justice, wanted revenge, wanted someone to pay for taking his son. But without evidence, prosecutors could not charge him, could not arrest him, could not do anything. Kowalski moved out of Columbus 6 months later, relocated to Indiana, left behind whispers and suspicions, but no convictions. The case went cold. Not officially. The investigation remained active. Tips still came in. Investigators still followed leads, but the momentum slowed. The media coverage decreased. The public attention faded, and the Peterson family was left with an empty bedroom and unanswered questions. Before I reveal what investigators discovered years later, let me ask you this. If your child disappeared in a crowded public place, what would you do? How would you keep hoping when every day brought no answers? The Peterson family faced this nightmare every single day for 16 years. Comment below your thoughts on missing children cases and how families can survive such unimaginable trauma. The years passed slowly for the Peterson family. Each birthday Marcus missed felt like another wound. Each Christmas without him felt hollow. Jennifer stopped working, could not focus, could not function in a normal job. She became a full-time advocate for missing children, joined support groups, spoke at conferences, helped other families navigate the impossible journey of having a missing child. David returned to construction work but threw himself into it obsessively, working 12-hour days, 14-hour days, anything to avoid being home, to avoid the memories, to avoid the pain. Their marriage struggled. Statistics show that 75% of marriages end in divorce after losing a child. The Peterson marriage survived, but barely. They attended counseling every week, learned to communicate, learned to grieve together instead of apart. Tyler grew up in the shadow of his missing brother, struggled with survivor's guilt. Why was he safe when Marcus was not? Why did Marcus disappear and not him? He had nightmares, anxiety attacks, depression. By age 16, he was in intensive therapy. By age 18, he moved away for college. Not because he did not love his parents, but because staying in Columbus meant living in the ghost of Marcus's absence. Every street corner held a memory. Every mall visit triggered panic attacks. He needed distance to heal. His parents understood. They let him go, gave him permission to build a life not defined by tragedy. The anniversary of Marcus's disappearance became an annual vigil. Every December 17th, hundreds of people gathered at Westfield Mall, lit candles, shared memories, released balloons. The local news covered it every year, interviewed Jennifer and David, showed age-progressed photos of what Marcus might look like at 13, at 15, at 18, at 21. Computer-generated images that tried to predict how he would age. Would he have his father's strong jaw? His mother's eyes? Would he be tall like David? Would he have gone to college? What kind of person would he have become? These questions haunted the family, unanswerable, unbearable, but impossible to stop asking. The Columbus Police Department never officially closed the case. Detective Mike Sullivan, who had been one of the first responders in 2005, kept the file on his desk, reviewed it periodically, followed up on any new tips. Even retired detectives called in occasionally with theories, with ideas, with what-if scenarios. The case became legendary in law enforcement circles, a perfect storm of circumstances. A crowded location, a brief moment of inattention, a malfunctioning alarm, a camera blind spot, and a child who vanished into thin air. Textbooks on missing children cases featured Marcus's story. Training seminars used it as an example of how quickly an abduction can happen, how vulnerable children are even in seemingly safe environments. The media attention came in waves. Major anniversaries brought renewed coverage. 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. National news outlets picked up the story. Dateline NBC featured the case in 2015. Cold Case Files did a special episode in 2018. Each time, the Peterson family participated. Each time, they hoped someone watching would recognize something, remember something, come forward with information that could break the case open. But each team of the tips led nowhere. Dead ends, false sightings. Well-meaning people who thought they saw Marcus but did not. The family learned to manage their expectations, to appreciate the attention without getting their hopes up too high. Theories multiplied over the years. Online communities dedicated to unsolved missing children cases dissected every detail of Marcus's disappearance. Amateur sleuths proposed elaborate scenarios. Some believed Richard Kowalski was guilty despite lack of evidence. Some theorized about human trafficking rings operating in shopping malls. Some suggested Marcus ran away voluntarily, though this made no sense for an 11-year-old with no history of behavioral problems. Some believed he was still alive somewhere, living under a different name, with no memory of his real family. Others believed the worst, that he had been killed that day, that his body was hidden somewhere, that the truth would never be known. The Peterson family struggled with these theories. Jennifer found herself reading online forums at 3 a.m, torturing herself with speculation. David avoided them entirely, refused to engage, refused to entertain scenarios without evidence. They coped differently, grieved differently, but they stayed together, stayed committed to finding answers, or at least to keeping Marcus's memory alive. They established the Marcus Peterson Foundation in 2010, a nonprofit organization dedicated to mall safety awareness, to educating parents about child abduction prevention, to supporting families of missing children. The foundation raised over $2 million in 11 years, helped dozens of families, provided resources, provided hope, provided community. If you think you know how this story ends, think again. Because after 16 years of silence, a discovery would emerge that no one saw coming. A discovery that would finally answer the question everyone had been asking since December 17, 2005. What happened to Marcus Peterson? In September 2021, Westfield Mall in Columbus underwent major renovations. The building had aged, stores had closed. The mall was struggling financially like many shopping centers in the age of online retail. New ownership decided to invest in revitalizing the property, updating the aesthetics, reconfiguring the layout, bringing in new tenants. Part of the renovation involved upgrading the entire HVAC system, replacing old ductwork, modernizing the mechanical rooms, updating the maintenance areas that the public never saw. A maintenance crew was working in the East Wing, the same wing where Marcus's scent had gone cold 16 years earlier. They were tearing out old walls, exposing infrastructure that had been hidden for decades. In a sealed-off area behind what used to be a storage closet, they found a room that was not on any official blueprints. A space roughly 8 feet by 10 feet. The door had been covered by drywall at some point, painted over, made invisible. When they broke through the wall, they found something that made the crew supervisor immediately call 911. The room contained items that clearly belonged to a child. A blue jacket, a red backpack, a pair of sneakers, comic books, a flashlight, empty water bottles, and a notebook, a spiral-bound notebook filled with handwritten pages. The crew supervisor recognized the significance immediately. Blue jacket, red backpack. He had lived in Columbus his whole life. He remembered the Marcus Peterson case. Everyone in Columbus remembered. He cleared everyone out, secured the area, waited for police to arrive. Detective Sullivan, now 62 years old and planning to retire in 6 months, got the call at 2:30 in the afternoon. He was at his desk, reviewing an unrelated case, when his phone rang and the voice on the other end said, "We found something at Westfield Mall." His heart skipped. He knew. Somehow he knew. He grabbed his partner. They drove to the mall with lights and sirens, arrived in 12 minutes. The crew supervisor met them at the entrance, led them through construction zones, through plastic sheeting and exposed beams, to the hidden room behind the old storage closet. Sullivan stood in the doorway and felt 16 years of questions rush through his mind. The blue jacket matched description. The red backpack had the same anime character Jennifer had described. The sneakers were the right size. But there was no body, no remains, just belongings. And the notebook. Sullivan put on gloves, carefully picked up the notebook, opened it, and began reading words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The notebook was a journal written in the handwriting of a child. The first entry was dated December 17, 2005, the day Marcus disappeared. The entries continued for several days, each one shorter than the last, each one more desperate, each one more heartbreaking. Marcus had been trapped in this room, locked inside by someone. And he had written about it, about what happened, about who took him, about his terror and confusion and hope that someone would find him. Sullivan called for backup immediately, called for forensics, called for the FBI, called for the Peterson family. Within an hour, the hidden room was a crime scene. Evidence, technicians, photographed everything, documented every item, collected DNA samples, fingerprints, fiber evidence. The notebook was carefully preserved, every page photographed before anyone touched it further. And then Sullivan had to do the hardest thing he had done in 37 years as a police officer. He had to tell Jennifer and David Peterson what they found. They met at the police station. Jennifer knew immediately something was wrong. Something was different. Sullivan's face betrayed him. He was not good at hiding emotion. Never had been. He sat them down in a private room. And he told them, "We found Marcus's belongings. We found a journal he kept. And we believe we know what happened." Jennifer's hands started shaking. David grabbed them, held on tight. Sullivan continued. "Marcus was taken. He was held in a hidden room at the mall. He wrote about it. He left us a message. But I need to prepare you, because what he wrote is going to be very difficult to hear. The answer to this mystery lies in a detail everyone overlooked, a detail that was right in front of investigators the entire time but seemed too unlikely to pursue, too bizarre to believe. But Marcus's journal revealed the truth, and the truth was darker than anyone had imagined. Stay with me, because the shocking revelation about who took Marcus and why will leave you speechless. Marcus's journal entries painted a terrifying picture. On December 17, 2005, Marcus had been standing in line at Pizza Palace. Felt someone tap his shoulder, turned around, saw a mall janitor, a man in his 50s wearing the standard maintenance uniform, navy blue shirt, gray pants, name tag that said Robert. The janitor said there was a problem, a leak in the bathroom. They needed to evacuate the food court. Could Marcus please follow him to safety? Marcus, being a polite 11-year-old who trusted adults, especially those in uniform, followed. The janitor led him away from the food court, through a service corridor the public did not normally use, told Marcus they needed to check the pipes, make sure everything was safe, then pushed him into the hidden room, locked the door from the outside, and walked away. Marcus wrote about his initial confusion. He thought it was a mistake, shouted for help, banged on the door, waited for someone to open it and apologize for the error, but no one came. Hours passed. The room was dark except for a small vent that let in dim light from the corridor outside. Marcus used his phone, tried to call 911, but there was no signal. The room was too deep inside the building, surrounded by concrete and metal. His phone battery died by evening. He drank the water bottles that were inexplicably already in the room, as if someone had prepared the space, stocked it, planned it. The journal entries became shorter after day 2. Marcus wrote about hearing voices outside, people walking past in the corridor, maintenance workers, security guards. He screamed, pounded on the walls. But the construction of the room muffled sound. The door was solid metal, the walls were thick, and the corridor outside was not frequently used. Only maintenance staff accessed that area, and the man who locked Marcus inside was maintenance staff. He could come and go as he pleased, could check on his prisoner without raising suspicion. Marcus wrote about feeling hungry, thirsty, cold, scared. He wrote about missing his mom, his dad, his brother. He wrote about wanting to go home, wondering why no one was finding him, wondering if anyone was looking. He wrote about praying, about making promises to God, about begging for rescue. The last entry was dated December 22, 2005, 5 days after his disappearance. The handwriting was shaky, the words barely legible. It simply said, "I am very cold. I am very tired. I want my mom," and then nothing. The rest of the pages were blank. Forensic analysis confirmed the worst. Marcus Peterson had died in that room. Alone. Terrified. Within a week of his disappearance, while hundreds of people searched for him, while police officers walked past that corridor multiple times, while his mother appeared on television begging for his return, he was less than 200 feet away, trapped behind a wall, in a room that did not officially exist. His body had decomposed over 16 years. The crew had not found remains because they had already been inadvertently disturbed during previous maintenance work over the years. Small amounts of bone fragments were found during forensic excavation. DNA testing confirmed they belonged to Marcus, but most physical evidence had been lost to time. The investigation shifted immediately. Who was Robert the janitor? Security footage from 2005 was re-examined. Dozens of maintenance workers had been employed at the mall. Any of them could have been the man Marcus described. Employee records were pulled. Background checks reviewed. Investigators focused on anyone named Robert, anyone who matched the description. A man in his 50s in 2005 would be in his 70s. Now, if still alive, the search narrowed to 3 possible suspects: Robert Morrison, Robert Chun, Robert Davison. All 3 had worked maintenance at Westfield Mall in 2005. All 3 had access to serviced corridors. All 3 wore uniforms with name tags. Robert Morrison had died in 2009. Heart attack. He was ruled out. Robert Chun was still alive, 74 years old, living in California. He was brought in for questioning. He had an alibi for December 17th. 2005. He had been on vacation in Hawaii with his wife. Hotel records, plane tickets, photos, all confirmed. He was cleared. That left Robert Davison, 71 years old, still living in Columbus, still working in maintenance, still wearing a uniform and walking through buildings unnoticed. Detective Sullivan and FBI agent Morrison, who had stayed involved in the case over the years, visited Davison at his apartment on October 3, 2021. He answered the door in his bathrobe, invited them inside without hesitation. The apartment was cluttered but clean, full of old furniture and outdated electronics. Davison seemed surprised by the visit but not nervous. Sullivan explained they were following up on the Marcus Peterson case. Davison nodded, said he remembered. Terrible tragedy. Such a sad story. Did they ever find that boy? Sullivan watched his face carefully. Saw nothing. No guilt. No recognition. No fear. Just mild curiosity. They asked Davison about his work at Westfield Mall. He confirmed he had worked there from 2003 until 2007. Then moved to another facility, worked various maintenance jobs around Columbus for the past 14 years. They asked if he remembered December 17, 2005. He thought for a moment, said he did not recall anything specific. It was a long time ago. They asked if he ever used the service corridors in the East Wing. He said of course. That was part of his job. Fixing things, checking pipes, responding to maintenance requests. Sullivan made a decision. He pulled out a photo, a still image from security footage showing a man in a maintenance uniform walking through the mall on December 17, 2005. The image was grainy, 16 years old. Enhanced as much as technology allowed. He asked Davison if he recognized the man. Davison leaned forward, squinted, and said, "That is me. I remember that uniform. Those were the old ones before they changed suppliers." Sullivan felt his pulse quicken. They asked Davison to come down to the station, to answer more questions, to help with the investigation. Davison agreed without hesitation. Got dressed, rode in the back of their car, chatted casually about the weather. At the station, they read Davison, his rights, explained he was not under arrest, but he had the right to an attorney. Davison waved it off, said he had nothing to hide. Sullivan and Morrison conducted the interview, started broad, narrowed dome. Asked about that day that Cohido, that hidden room, Davison's demeanor never changed. He was cooperative, friendly, almost helpful, until Sullivan placed Marcus's journal on the table, opened it to the first page, and read aloud. "A mall janitor named Robert said there was a leak. I followed him. He locked me in a room." Davison's face changed. The friendliness evaporated. His eyes went cold. Sullivan asked if he had anything to say. Davison leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms, and after a long silence said, "I want a lawyer." The interview ended immediately. Davison was arrested and charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, and felony murder. The case that had haunted Columbus for 16 years suddenly had a suspect. A confession was not necessary. The evidence was there. The journal, the security footage, the forensic connection between Davison and the hidden room. Investigators found construction blueprints in Davison's apartment, old plans of Westfield Mall, the hidden room marked with a pin. He had known about that space, had access to it, had used it. But the question remained, why? Why would a maintenance worker with no criminal record suddenly kidnap a child and lock him in a hidden room? Why Marcus? Why that day? The answer came during a search of Davison's storage unit. Inside they found boxes of documents, journals of his own, dated back decades, and what they revealed was chilling. Davison had a long history of obsession with children, specifically boys around age 10 to 12. He had never acted on it before Marcus, but he had written about it, fantasized about it, planned it. The journals detailed years of watching children at the mall, learning their patterns, identifying vulnerable moments, and on December 17, 2005, he finally acted. He had prepared the hidden room weeks in advance, stocked it with water, left a flashlight, created a space where he intended to keep Marcus alive. He planned to visit him, to interact with him, to fulfill his twisted fantasies. But something went wrong. Davison had a family emergency the day after Marcus's disappearance. His mother, in another state, had a stroke. He left Columbus immediately, drove to Michigan, stayed for 2 weeks. By the time he returned, Marcus was dead. Davison panicked, sealed the room, covered the door with drywall, painted over it, made it disappear, and carried the secret for 16 years. During the trial in 2022, prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence. The journal, the blueprints, Davison's own writings, security footage, forensic evidence from the room, DNA meshes, fiber analysis, witnesses who remembered Davison working that day. The defense tried to argue that the journal could have been forged, that Davison was being framed, but the evidence was irrefutable. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours, found Robert Davison guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without possibility of parole. At 72 years old, Davison would die behind bars. After 16 years of questions, the Peterson family finally had answers, But answers did not bring Marcus back. Answers did not erase the trauma. Answers did not undo the damage. Jennifer and David sat in the courtroom and listened to the verdict. They did not cheer, did not cry, just held hands and breathed. For the first time in 16 years, they could breathe. The mystery was solved. The perpetrator was punished. Marcus could rest in peace. The aftermath was complex. The Peterson family filed a civil lawsuit against Westfield Mall ownership, argued that inadequate security, the malfunctioning alarm, the unmarked maintenance areas, and the lack of oversight had all contributed to Marcus's death. The case settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. The family donated most of it to the Marcus Peterson Foundation, used it to fund child safety initiatives, to train, to advocate for better surveillance, to prevent other families from experiencing their nightmare. Jennifer and David finally allowed themselves to grieve properly. To have a funeral, Marcus's remains, what little had been recovered, a memorial service was held at their church. Hundreds attended. The community that had supported them for 16 years came together one final time to say goodbye. To remember Marcus not as the missing boy, but as the person he was. A son, a brother, a friend. A child who loved comic books and pizza and his family. A life cut short by evil but not defined by it. Tyler, now 27 years old, returned home for the service. Spoke about his brother. Shared memories, talked about the guilt he had carried. The survivor's guilt, the feeling that he should have been there, should have protected Marcus, should have done something. But therapists had taught him that he was a child too, that he bore no responsibility, that the only person at fault was Robert Davison. Tyler found closure in the truth, found peace in finally knowing. The Marcus Peterson Foundation expanded after the case was solved. Jennifer became a nationally recognized advocate for missing children. She spoke at conferences, testified before Congress, worked with law enforcement agencies to improve response protocols for child abductions. She turned her pain into purpose, turned her loss into legacy. David retired from construction, focused full-time on the foundation, on helping other families, on making sure Marcus's name meant something more than tragedy. The case led to significant changes in mall security nationwide. New standards for surveillance coverage, elimination of camera blind spots, requirements for working, alarms on all emergency exits, better training for security personnel, stricter background checks for maintenance workers, access control for service areas, protocols for reporting suspicious behavior. The Marcus Peterson Act, passed by the Ohio legislature in 2023, mandated these standards for all shopping centers in the state. Other states followed. The impact was measurable, preventable, born from unspeakable loss but ultimately saving lives. Mall security, the true crime community responded powerfully to the resolution of Marcus's case. Podcasts dedicated episodes to The Breakthrough. YouTube channels created documentaries. Authors wrote books. But the Peterson family was careful about how Marcus's story was told. They partnered only with creators who treated the case with respect, who focused on prevention and awareness, who honored Marcus's memory without sensationalizing his death. The Missing Innocence channel reached out. Jennifer and David appreciated the approach, the focus on child safety, the respectful tone, the commitment to education. They gave permission for this story to be told. Lessons learned from Marcus's case extend beyond physical security. They speak to the importance of vigilance, of trusting instincts, of teaching children about danger even in familiar places. Marcus trusted an adult in a uniform, an authority figure. He followed because he was taught to respect authority, but children also need to know that real authority figures will never isolate them, will never separate them from their parents without permission, will never create situations that feel wrong. The Peterson family now teaches this balance. Respect authority, but question actions that do not make sense. Trust adults, but verify. Stay visible, stay vocal, stay safe. If this story affected you like it affected me, please hit that like button. Share this video to spread awareness about missing children cases and the importance of mall safety. Comment below your thoughts on how we can better protect children in public spaces. Subscribe to Missing Innocence for more true crime stories that matter. Stories that educate, stories that prevent future tragedies, stories that honor victims and support families. The Westfield Mall in Columbus closed permanently in 2023. Not directly because of Marcus's case, but the association was unavoidable. The building sat empty for months, eventually demolished to make way for mixed-use development. Before demolition, the Peterson family visited one final time, stood where the food court used to be, where Jennifer had looked down at her phone for 30 seconds, where Marcus had walked away toward the pizza palace, where everything changed. They placed flowers, said prayers, say goodbye, not just to Marcus but to the nightmare that had defined 16 years of their lives. David Peterson said in a later interview that closure is a strange word. It suggests that something ends, that pain stops, that life returns to normal. But that is not how it works. Marcus's death will always be part of their story. The hole he left will never be filled. But knowing what happened allowed them to stop searching, allowed them to stop imagining, allowed them to focus on remembering Marcus for who he was rather than wondering about what happened to him. That, David said, is not closure. That is acceptance. And acceptance is enough. Jennifer Peterson became a voice for families of missing children. Her message is consistent. Never give up hope, but also never let hope prevent you from living. The families of missing children exist in limbo, between grief and hope, between acceptance and denial, between moving forward and staying frozen in the moment their child disappeared. Jennifer teaches that it is possible to do both, to hope and to heal, to search and to live, to remember and to continue. She is proof that survival is possible even after the worst imaginable loss. The case of Marcus Peterson reminds us that missing children cases can remain unsolved for decades, that answers can come from unexpected places, that justice can be delayed but not denied, that evil exists but so does resilience, that families can endure unimaginable pain and still find purpose, that communities can support and sustain, that awareness and education can prevent future tragedies, that every missing child deserves to be remembered, deserves to have their story told, deserves justice. This is the story of Marcus Peterson, an 11-year-old boy who vanished from a mall food court in 2005, whose disappearance haunted a family, a community, and a nation for 16 years, whose journal, discovered in a hidden maintenance room, finally revealed the truth, whose death led to meaningful change in child safety standards, whose memory lives on through the foundation bearing his name, whose family turned tragedy into advocacy, whose case reminds us that in the realm of missing children, every second matters, every detail counts, every family deserves answers. If you found this case as important as I did, please subscribe to Missing Innocence. We share true crime stories focused on child disappearance cases, stories that educate, stories that raise awareness, stories that honor victims and support survivors. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Share this video with others who care about child safety. Comment your thoughts below. And remember, the best way to honor missing children is to protect the ones who are still here. Stay vigilant, stay aware, stay engaged, because every child deserves to come home safely. Thank you for watching this heartbreaking story of child disappearance. Thank you for caring about missing children cases. Thank you for being part of a community that believes in justice, in awareness, and in prevention. Marcus Peterson's legacy is not just his tragic death, it is the lives saved by the changes his case inspired. That is how we honor the missing. That is how we remember the lost. That is how we ensure their stories matter.